What happens if a clinician doesn't look at the whole picture and only looks at seizures?
When we miss an impairment, we'll have a disability later. You cannot unlock anymore that impairment, and it's consolidated over time.
I'm Tori Robinson, and I'm joined by Professor Kette Valente, paediatric neurologist and epileptologist in Sao Paulo, with a focus on developmental and epileptic encephalopathies, or DEEs, where we discuss assessing non-seizure outcomes. This episode is presented in partnership with Easy by Prosthesis GmbH. We still need to anchor epilepsy outcomes around seizure frequency or severity even, but in developmental and epileptic encephalopathies, or DEEs, where non-seizure symptoms, especially like cognitive, developmental or psychiatric, can be quite prominent, how can they most consistently drive long-term disability?
Seizure frequency and severity cannot be used as the only endpoint, as you know. And as the regulatory agents have already made clear, because as you said, they are not the only factor driving disability. If they were, it wouldn't be a DE by definition. What else is important? What else matters? I think that it's very hard to establish just one thing. But in the long run, some domains, let's say like this, set the ceiling for later independence. In this sense, we would have communication and daily skills, meaning adaptive functioning, autism-related social communication, behavior, especially in older children, motor gait dysfunction. Also, we should not forget sleep. Then, if we have to put everything in one package, neurodevelopmental disorders, they will impact, yes, the long-term disability.
What happens if a clinician doesn't look at the whole picture and only looks at seizures?
I think that there is a childhood onset study, 10 years older. What showed is that when we miss an impairment, we'll have a disability later. You cannot unlock anymore that impairment, and it's consolidated over time. Tori, we have, and this is a failure, we don't have controlled studies comparing those children that had earlier diagnosis and those that do not. This is a paper, very simple paper I published last year, non-seizure symptoms diagnosis. What happens after the diagnosis? And the thing is, only 30% they have some sort of support. So there is no diagnosis. We are discussing so much assessment. We are discussing so much tools in this clinical trial readiness or madness moment. We are diagnosing. And after that,
what are the impacts when there isn't an earlier diagnosis?
I think that we can learn from other disorders. As I said, we don't have so many studies in these. From other disorders, what we have, if you have an early diagnosis, I'm not speaking about seizures, I'm speaking about non-seizure symptoms. And if there is an intervention, you can improve the outcome. Like crouch gait. Although we don't have any study about crouch gait in Dravet syndrome, crouch gait is not exclusive of Dravet syndrome. And we have a lot of studies about the improvement of gait if you have an intervention on crouch gait. So, but we don't have in Dravet.
Yet.
Yet. Yeah. The same for SYNGAP1. In our group, we could detect it's about to be submitted. So hypermobility, they have hypermobility. And it's not something that's exclusive of SYNGAP 1. 30% of children with autism have hypermobility, but in SYNGAP 1 we saw a lot. And there are certain types of intervention for hypermobility that can improve the outcome, meaning that they can walk later. It's a special type of physical therapy for this. It's not only hypotonia. All children with DE, we say hypotonia and gait disorders, but hey, what type of gait disorders? There are different types of gait disorders. So it's just an example of what we can do. We cannot improve intelligence. We know intelligence is a roof.
Although, having said that, there are certain things that can, in some cases, certain treatments or actions that can potentially improve cognitive function. For instance, if we reduce seizure frequency.
Not only seizure frequency, but yes, absolutely.
So your IQ could be here, but you're maybe functioning at this level. But if you can improve symptoms or reduce them, then your functioning could improve.
Yes, this is what we show with ADHD, for example, right? I have one, now is an adolescent with ADHD, that he uses a Brazilian expression, I was always swimming and dying in the sea, because it was such a big effort to achieve what? And when he was treated, it was not anymore. So he could achieve his full potential. This is what you mean. If you train children, even with intellectual disability, in this sense, I would say mild, then we can have an improvement in their skills. This is something that we see on a daily basis. Even for children with DEs, with mild intellectual disability, and we have them because it's a spectrum, and different DEs, they have the potential to achieve more. Even now, when we follow the SYNGAP, now it's 1 year. I'm just exemplifying with SYNGAP, I'm sorry, but there are others like Prof or Angelman. And the milder cases, they improve their expression because, when we break down Vineland in subdomains, Vineland communication is writing, expression, receptive language. If you break down like this, then you see that expression improves. The receptive language also improves. Writing does not. So you have to have a clear vision about what can improve and what cannot. But having said that, you are absolutely right. If you cannot increase IQ, and I don't think we should use IQ as a measure in these children because we cannot measure IQ.
Right.
Actually, we have to assess their functioning in different ways.
Before we move on, with thanks to Easy by Prosthesis GmbH. So when it comes to assessing people with these rare epilepsies, and I almost said children, but this is adults as well, what tools do you use?
First of all, let's break down the rare epilepsies in two types. If you have profound intellectual disability, this is one thing. Then we are not speaking about transition. Let's say that we are discussing here the Ds with mild to moderate intellectual disability. And then in this group, I can have Dravet, I can have SYNGAP 1, I can have some children with Lennox, and so on, so forth. And this group of children, we are using frameworks, that were developed for children with intellectual disability and autism spectrum disorder. And the tools that we have used are Vineland, that based on caregiver observation. Bailey, that's based on our observation, but has to be someone trained and certified. First thing I can say is that using just one is not enough. Using just one tool is not enough. The best scenario is to use one for caregivers and one that you can observe the child. Also, we have to remember that these children have multiple deficits, not only one. So you may have one tool that is perfect, gold standard, like, for example, ADOS for autism spectrum disorder is perfect. However, when you have a child with intellectual disability or a hearing or visual deficit, it's not perfect anymore because it's based on understanding. Okay? So we have to evaluate a lot of things. If I am asking for a child to write something and this child cannot move his hand or her hand, makes no sense, or point objects, but there is a cortical visual impairment, it's over, game over. So we have to adapt. The most frequently used, I would say that it's Vineland and Bailey for functioning. ABBAS is an equivalent of Vineland for functioning. Too. We have one for sleep developed by Oliviero Bruni, that it's good, it's great. And for behavior, we have to be careful. Because when this whole thing about let's assess children with DEs started, there is a famous tool that is used called CBCL, Child Behavior Checklist. That is really great, but was not designed for children or adolescents with intellectual disability at all. Why? Because it does imply unwillingness. I understand the consequence. So aggressiveness in CBCL is about conduct disorder, not disruptive, challenging behavior. For this purpose, we will have ABC and DBC. And something I think you like, Colin Riley from UK is leading a paper, not from UK, now he is in Sweden. He was my co-chair for a long time. We worked together and I love working with him. He's leading a paper. I'm one of the authors that we are suggesting some measurements, some domains to be measured and some measurements that were developed for children with intellectual disability and may help when you choose one instrument.
Thank you so much, Takeshi, for unpacking why epilepsy outcomes can't be understood through seizures alone, and for explaining how misimpairments can shape long-term disability. With thanks again to EC by Prosthesis for partnering with Epilepsy Sparks. If you found this conversation helpful, please give it a like and subscribe, and hit the bell so that you are notified when new episodes drop. I would love to hear your thoughts or experiences in the comments below. Thank you for joining us, and see you next time.